Oh, it's been a while, so to make up for that, I'm going to share with you today 7 words that I find really important for growth, for self-help, for this whole coming to terms with how just weird, strange, paradoxical, just absurd the whole world is. And that is one of the words, but it's not the one we're going to start off with. The one we're going to start off with is, number 1, archetype. Because I believe everything comes down to story, so understanding the big stories, the big patterns, and the characters that are in that is really important. Understanding the jester, the outlaw, the hero, the magician, all of these are aspects of yourself. That is why these characters are repeated, they're eternal, they speak to some part of us. Some part of us, the jester, wants to make fun, wants to have a laugh. Some part of us, the hero, wants to take on responsibility, wants to overcome and bring back the gold. The caregiver wants to nourish what's coming after them. All of these, I would highly recommend familiarizing yourself with just the 12 archetypes, Jung's 12 archetypes, and go down the rabbit hole as you wish. Number 2 is perspective. So this one's simple as well, but shifting perspectives, okay? It's just something that we don't do often enough, and it does lead into the next one. But sticking with perspective is just the fact, just how good are we at fully taking on someone else's perspective? How good are we at fully understanding just how much of what we're seeing of the world is our perspective of the world, is understood through the lens of whatever our relationship is with money, with possessions, with relationships, with ourselves. Just perspective. Can they be shifted? Can they be just experimented with? Can they be experimented with? What would this world look like if I had a different attachment style? What would this world look like, going back to the archetypes, if one of those archetypes was here right now? Then you're getting into the whole family internal systems therapy, and you're getting into parts work, and you're getting into all those sort of things. Really rich, really rich. Okay, number 3 is the absurd. Is just that the world is absurd. It is, it doesn't make perfect sense. I can't argue why you love someone. Can't argue why I love someone. It's not like an argument that makes sense. At a certain point, it's just absurd. I can't argue you into forgiving someone. And I can't argue why I forgave someone. At a certain point, there's just a jump, and it's just a bit absurd. With everything, okay, let's go back to the virtues, because that's my wheelhouse. That's where I face the absurd every week, because we try to talk about the virtues and we realize that the virtues are really hard to define. But that explanation will take a minute, so I won't give you that one. What I will say is that you want to be humble. You want the world to teach you. You want to say, like, yes, I don't know everything. That's 100%. You teach me. But obviously that can go too far, and you can just kind of be a servant. And you also want to be authentic. You want, to listen to your true inner self. You want to be connected. You want to be aligned. You want the wording here makes no difference. You want it to kind of feel good. You want it to source from this primal instinct and just flow, and for it to be genuinely who you are, and for that hopefully to work in the world. And you want both of those things. And they are paradoxes, because being authentic in its extreme is just total discount of the outside world. 3rd is Socratic irony. Now, this is where the terms get a little bit more complicated, but give it a moment. You know what irony is. Socratic irony is just a way of saying it's from a dead ancient Greek. But Socratic irony is accepting that we are living the world through our perspective. It is accepting that we are kind of putting on characters. At any given moment, we are channeling different versions of ourselves. In this moment, I am in my teaching mode, or my YouTube mode, or my just ranting and raving mode, whatever it is. But it is not my listening mode. It is not my learning mode. It is not my social or whatever else. There are different masks that we put on, and they have different coping strategies. They have different mannerisms. They have different tics and tells, perhaps. They might even have different conversation styles, such as here, storytelling and a bit of lecturing. In the world outside, perhaps a bit more debating, perhaps a bit more listening. So, coming to terms with Socratic irony and recognizing that no single moment captures you really helps to shed the defense systems. Because it means that if someone gets upset, someone gets annoyed at what you just said or what you just did, you are safe in the knowledge that that wasn't the entirety of you. It was part of you, and yes, that part of you might need to listen, might need to learn, might need to adapt. Different parts of you might need to integrate together because, yes, that behavior, it just seems like it doesn't have a lot of integrity with the rest of you, perhaps. But having that distance and recognizing that whatever way I'm playing in the world, whatever way I'm showing up, there's a certain irony to it. It's not going to capture me because it couldn't. I'm too bloody complicated. As are you. That brings us straight to number 4, which is paradox and tonos. I'm going to use the word tonos here instead of tension, because tension brings that sense of kind of agony and pain and ripping, where tonos I'm using so that you get that kind of sense of tension, but more like a drum, where you're holding the tension so that the music can be as beautiful as it can be. That in that tension is where the music is found, not in the tension between two competing forces, but just two held positions and the tension there. So, why is tonos and paradox important? Well, what we've gone through so far, you can see that we're doing this kind of like non-dualist, very multi-perspective sort of angle in this video, where we are saying that the archetypes are multiple different versions of us, perspectives. We inhabit the world through our perspective, and no one perspective captures absolutely everything. So Socratic irony is kind of leaning into that and choosing perhaps a character for the moment to perform it, recognizing that it won't capture you entirely. And that is a leap of faith. That's a big one. But let's not get too existential on that. If your existential angst is really going on that, Kierkegaard is your man. It's very good. So for tonos and paradox, this is, for me, where I find vitality. I want to be humble and I want to be authentic. They are two opposing virtues. There is a tension between them. I want to be authentic. I want to be strong. I want to be able to talk and communicate and share myself and offer what I can. But I also want to be humble and recognize I don't know everything, and I still want to learn and I still want to grow. And those two are in constant tension. And today I'm veering on one side, the next day I'm veering on the other side. And if I only had one of them, I wouldn't be able to grow. Because I always want to be humble. Okay, keep teaching me, keep teaching me, keep teaching me. And I'd never output. I'd never actually grow into something. And if I was always being authentic, well then I'd have hubris and I'd have arrogance and I wouldn't listen to anyone else and I'd get caught up in my own headspace. So that's the idea of a tension and a paradox being a source of vitality, rather than it being this just confusing, oh, that's a lot, that's too much. That like never ends. There's no end to that conflict. So just, can I not just sit down and be comfortable and all the rest? You can, but you're missing out on vitality. Tense between those two. I want to learn and I also want to feel what's good. Here's how to play the instrument. Okay, here's how I can solo. Okay, here's how you can put a bit of extra Bach into your solo. Okay, here's how I can play with Bach now. This is brilliant. And you get okay, if that was the growth rate, that'd be impressive. And that brings us beautifully into number 5, which is finesse or tonos. So finesse is just in this world that I'm trying to describe, and in the world that you probably sense around you, with all of this paradox and absurdity and this irony and this everything that's here in the material world isn't capturing everything that's going on behind in this kind of conscious world, and yet it's all I can offer, and this is where the play with other people happen, and they can only offer what they can put into the material as well, and it will be a simpler version of the complexity. And yet in that, accepting that you'll never be fully understood in a moment. There will always be more to be understood. There will always be more conversation explaining the moment. And that's if we want to understand it. But if we lean into it and we don't want to understand it per se, we don't want to kind of deconstruct it and analyze it, just for flowing into it, accepting that as a part of the universe and just leaning into it and saying, do you know what? I don't know. And I don't know how it's going to get taken up, and I don't know if I'm going to be arrogant when I should be humble. I don't know if I'm going to be humble when I should be authentic. I don't know, and yet I'm going to try to dance. I'm going to try and make it as beautiful and as fun and as just as perfect or beautiful as possible. That is what finesse or tonos is referring to. It is just this spirit of swag, is another way of saying it. But this is why over in the East that they have tea ceremonies where even the simple bits are tried to be done with beauty, are tried to be done with grace. This is why through all of history there have been sacred dances and sacred music and all of this sort of stuff. It is so that there is a style and a flair, and there's a burning spirit that can be shown through, despite the fact that not everything in that spirit is getting captured in the moment, that the moment indicates that there's so much more. It like draws you in and then just leaves it open, just so you don't get the satisfaction of just, that's a moment complete, consume, finished. You get this kind of like, whoo, that was flair, I want more. That was just something that impresses. Or maybe not to impress, but just to be done with flair by the person. Number 6 is non-duality and the absurd. I've used the absurd a few times now. Non-duality has been the kind of premise of this video. But this space of sitting back and recognizing there are two. This space of recognizing and saying, sometimes it's important for me to provide energy and to enter into a room and be all gusto and bravado and entertaining and funny and all of the stories and all of the energy coming at you. But it can be a bit much. And yes, it can be a bit much. And then other times you want to enter into a room and you want to listen. You want to be susceptible. You want to be sensitive to the energy that's going on in the room. And to be able to sit back and have this space that there is a third here. There is a sitting space here between the two. This is a non-dual perspective. This is accepting the absurdity of life. This is recognizing that you don't know the answer, and maybe the answer changes how the movie goes or how the dance goes, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just there to make it a bit more beautiful in this moment. But all of this analysis paralysis, all of this philosophy that I have definitely gotten stuck on and has definitely been the impetus for this video. But all of that, just recognizing that there are two, and recognizing that there will always be two, and that the world is this kind of non-dual, and that you do have to sit back and hold the two in tension, in tonos. You have to hold that paradox and just have a non-dual perspective on the world. You will always find dualities. There will always be a moment of push, pull. There will always be a yin to the yang. This is an ancient idea, but it is well worth meditating on. If everything just seems a bit absurd, and if you're like, why bother? Finding this space back here is really important, and then finding the emphasis, the flair, the finesse, the tomos or thumos to just shout, to be a burning star in the night sky, even though it's an endless night, just to burn bright. If you can find those two, find this seat behind the non-dualism, and just kind of like, yes, there's two, and then have that lean in where you're like, and I will act, I will perform, I will have fun in this life. Lastly, is the left and right hemisphere. This is Ian McGilchrist's work, where he has a tome of book called The Master and His Emissary, where he goes through the fact that we have a bihemisphere brain. We've two hemispheres in our brain. We have a left and a right. And that these are orientated towards different systems. That we have a left hemisphere which is organized around getting and manipulating and doing the kind of small details, like, oh, I'm eating, oh, I'm making a tool, okay, like I'm doing this stuff with my hands, it's really important. Left hemisphere, awesome. But if a predator comes around right now, I am screwed, and this left hemisphere does not have the capacity to do two things at once. It does not. So what it has to do is that there has to be a right hemisphere that is looking out and putting yourself into perspective, putting yourself into the context of the situation and how that affects you. So this is where you're making a tool, you're eating food, you're doing whatever else. It is this right hemisphere that scans the horizon. It is the right hemisphere that deals with potential. It is the right hemisphere that deals with the unknown. So we have a left hemisphere, deals with the known, the manipulatable, the things that we can do. Right hemisphere, the unknown, the potential, the imagined, the anticipated. That's really important, because so often we think that we got it. We think that we know what it is to be a good human, to be a good parent, to be a good partner, to be a good worker, whatever it is. We know, we have all the pieces, and we know what it is to have a good life, and we know what it is, like where the world is going, and we know how to innovate ourselves out of any world problem that we have. Yes, the left hemisphere has it covered. Don't worry about it. Don't stress. Right hemisphere, you're worried about the potential of the world, and you're worried about these things that seem to be on the horizon. Yes, we are in a world that is dominated by the left brain. And this is a big part of what Ian McGilchrist goes on about in his new book, The Matter with Things. So giving your right hemisphere a bit more authority. How do you do that? You tap into intuition. You tap into your imagination. You tap into the half of your hemisphere, or the half of your brain that is in touch with deeper patterns, deeper routines. Now, I will say ritual is really good for tapping into this. You can think of this as the subconscious. You can think of this as so many different things. All of those will be wrong. But if we just, for the purpose of this video, if we move forward and kind of stumble into it, and we'll figure out the cracks on the way. Giving yourself more space to feel into stuff. Again, intuition, really important. Imagination, what would the world look like? How can I shift perspectives? How can I use the archetypes to hold multiple perspectives? How can I sit back and find this non-dual sort of space where I'm not the sole author of my story, where there is some outside force that some part of my brain needs to kind of keep an eye on and needs to be in touch with. So with all of that said, that is 7 different terms that have been really important for me in this last month, where I've taken a bit of a break and I've moved house. Here's the new setup. And this is the new emphasis of this channel, is going to be language for growth. So how to help, or words that just kind of unlock different doors. But with all of that said, thank you so much. Thank you for your time and attention. And I hope to see you in the next one. Bye, guys.